ma'am.
Yes, Aaron, tell me.
It can change its properties. It has like a property like that, anisotropy.
Yeah, I didn't. It was the definition is not clear. Like you know it, but how you format it is not clear. You're having your notebook with you.
Yes, ma'am.
So how can you define it anisotropy? Yes, Aaron.
Ma'am, is the phenomenon of having a property of a material which
Hmm?
allows it to change or assume different properties. So,
That is what anisotropy. That is what we discuss. Yes, Taizir.
The phenomenon of having a different magnitude for the same physical property when measured from different directions.
Yeah, when we are measuring a same physical property in different directions of a solid, then the values are different. That phenomenon is known as anisotropy, right? So we discussed that crystals are anisotropic and amorphous substances are isotropic. They have the same value or magnitude when measured in all the directions. Right, Aaron?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, yes, Jopol. How can you differentiate between crystalline and amorphous substances? What is the major difference between them? Jopol, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. One sec.
Don't refer your notebook. What you understood from the class that you can just point out. Just tell me in your word. That's fine. Jopol, are you there? No?
Yes, ma'am. Substances that have a completely rigid structure, where the molecule there is no intermolecular space.
No, intermolecular space and all cannot be mentioned because that is where we classify a state of matter like solid, liquid, and gas in terms of their intermolecular spaces. So, amorphous and crystalline both are solids. So, what was the basis of classifying a solid as a crystalline and amorphous?
On arrangement.
So, what kind of difference is there in the arrangement?
Yes, ma'am. Crystalline substances like the geometry, like how no matter how much you cut it, the shape, the geometry remains the same.
Yeah, or you can see the geometry is maintained
Geometry.
throughout, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It's maintained throughout that substance. If you take a piece of a metal or if you take a piece of a ionic crystal, something, the geometry is maintained throughout. The same geometry you will get in the top or the bottom or the middle part of it. But for amorphous, there is geometry like compared to liquid and gas. It is solid. There is geometry, but that is not maintained throughout that substance. Less orderness compared to crystalline form.
Yes, ma'am.
So that was the basis of classification. Okay. Johan, Johan. Yeah, what was the other difference between properties of crystalline and amorphous substances? Johan? Yeah. Are you saying something? Because you're not audible to me. Any difference in the properties of amorphous and crystalline substances?
They are not arranged in regular series.
The regular arrangement we already talked. Jopal was pointing that difference in the arrangement. Other than that, what was the other thing like? Any other properties?
Their
ma'am.
melting points.
Ma'am, can I answer?
Yeah, melting point. Melting point, yes, Johan. Melting point in
Crystalline
crystalline.
solids have a distinct or fixed melting point, but amorphous solids don't.
Yeah, there is a range of temperature, right? That's what, rather than a sharp value for melting point, it is in the range of temperature. Okay, Johan, right? Okay, please keep your
Yes,
video
ma'am.
on only, okay? Yes, Prasanna, can you give the other points that we discussed as a difference in the properties?
Yes, ma'am. Crystalline substances have long range order, and amorphous has short range order. In a crystalline substance, there's a long range of molecules connected, but in amorphous, there's like 3 or 4. It's very short. And crystallines are true solids, and amorphous are pseudo solids, which means false. Pseudo means false. So or it can be called as supercooled liquids. And yes, also crystalline has a fixed value of heat of fusion, and amorphous has no fixed value of heat of fusion.
Okay, so this was the points we discussed, and also we discussed few questions on the point of view of exam, like why the glasses have got thicker at the bottom and why there is a milkiness in the old window glasses, and that was attributed to the amorphous property, or like the ability to flow for the amorphous substances, because it is considered as a super cooled liquids. So that was I think that was the last thing we discussed. There are a few more questions that can be solved during like when I upload the notes. So let's move to the next part of it, another kind of classification, because yesterday we classified solids as amorphous and crystalline. That was based on the arrangement of the constituent particle. The second type of classification is depending on the nature of binding force. What kind of force is operating between the particles? Based on that, crystalline is further classified as molecular, ionic, metallic, and covalent solid. Molecular, ionic, metallic, and covalent solid. So these are the 4 classification of crystalline solid, and this classification is done based on what kind of force is operating between the constituent particle. Molecular, ionic, metallic, and covalent solid. So we will discuss it one by one in each category quickly. I think about the covalent solid is graphite and diamond.
Ma'am, can we write this?
Yeah. Next, classification based on the nature of binding force. Molecular, ionic, metallic, and covalent solids. So again, we will compare these properties of these 4 substances. Okay, I got a table I'll share with you. Yeah. So let's start.
Can you show us that?
Same thing, yeah. Based on the arrangement, we can classify it as crystalline and amorphous, and based on the force of binding force, that is force of attraction, crystalline substances are again classified as molecular, ionic, metallic, and covalent solids. Okay, now let's look into each one of these categories in detail. First one is molecular solid. Molecular solid mean, as you can see, mainly it is made up of molecules. The constituent particles will be molecules, and the force of attraction will be very weak van der Waals force of attraction. That is important thing. The force operating between the particle, or the attractive force between the particles, is van der Waals force of attraction. So comparatively, these kind of solids will be soft. They are non-conductors of electricity, low melting point and boiling point. Mostly it will exist as gases or liquid at room temperature. So these are the important characteristic properties of molecular solids. So molecular solids mean majority of example except noble gases. Noble gases are the only example which are at atomic form but still coming under molecular solid because the force operating between them is van der Waals force of attraction. Because we said that the classification is done based on the type of force operating. So based on this force only we are classifying. So molecular solids mean the force acting between the constituent particle is van der Waals force. So most of them, the particles are molecule except for noble gases where atoms are connected by van der Waals force of attraction. Molecular solids can be of three different types: non-polar molecules, polar molecules, and hydrogen bonded molecular solids. Non-polar molecules mean like same atom, H2, two hydrogen atom joined as a molecule, Cl2, two chlorine, I2, iodine, that is two iodine atoms joined, right? So where the identical atoms are combined to make a molecule, so there will be no polarity because the atoms of similar same identity is joined. So no polarity will be there. So such molecules will be non-polar molecular solid because there is no polarity. But when you come to polar molecules, it is basically you can see dry ice, that is carbon dioxide, SO2, NH3, etc., where the molecules have got a polarity because of the difference in the electronegativity. And third category is hydrogen bonded, and that is basically applicable in the case of H2O. Because H2O, if you take example of ice, it is made up of H2O molecule connected, and the force of attraction between the H2O molecule is hydrogen bonding. So it is a molecular solid and the force acting is hydrogen bonded. So mostly it will be, most of the cases it is van der Waals force of attraction, but except in like water and all you can give, there is hydrogen bonding is also present.
Ma'am, do we write all this?
I'll do one thing. I'll upload the notes so that you can write it down in detail. Or if you have time, then you can copy it down.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yeah.
How do these classify as solids if they exist as liquids and gases at room temperature?
No, mostly these substances, okay, they exist as liquids and gases at room temperature. But if you solidify them, then the force of attraction acting between them will be like this.
Okay, so ma'am, this is all after solidifying them.
Yeah, otherwise it will not have that property. No.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Otherwise, hydrogen is a gas at room temperature, argon is a gas, so you can't see in a solid properties to them. So that is the first category. Here, just a general understanding is fine. And so that I don't want to waste much time on discussing all these things. It's just a general information is fine. Okay. Like you don't have to break your head thinking all these things. That's what I meant.
Ma'am, can you repeat that exception you told for noble gases?
No, noble gases is, see here we written that constituent particles are molecules, right? So if you take H2, Cl2, dry ice or H2O, the component particle is molecule, either H2 or H2O or CO2 or SO2. The particles are molecules. But for noble gases, if you see, they are atoms, right? Argon, another atom of argon, and the force of attraction operating is van der Waals force. So for them, the constituent particle is not molecule.
Okay, ma'am, thank you.
Because we learned that noble gases has stable already in the atomic form. So they don't tend to make molecules in the normal condition. They don't dimerize or trimerize.
Okay, ma'am.
Then you have ionic solids. That is, you already know it will be made up of positive and negative ions, and the force of attraction will be electrostatic force. That is the force of attraction between a positive and negative. Electrostatic force, or we also Coulombic force. So these kind of ionic solid, only important point to be noted, they will not conduct electricity. They are non-conductor of electricity in solid state, because positive and negative, these charges are arranged in a regular order with a strong force between them. As a result, these ions are unable to move. So charge, when it is stayed in one position, it cannot conduct electricity. Okay, but when they are started moving, they can conduct electricity. So whether the positive or negative or the electron, if they are static, they stays in one place, mean it can't conduct electricity. That is why we say they are non-conductor of electricity in solid state, but they do conduct electricity when you melt them. Because when you are melting a solid, these ions are free to move. And when these are free to move, mean they are able to conduct electricity. So either you have to melt them or you have to dissolve them to make a solution. So only in those this condition, ionic compounds or ionic solids conduct electricity. That is either in the melted form or when you are making a solution by dissolving it. But in the solid state, they are non-conductor of electricity. All the ionic compounds, like made up of metal and non-metal, or metal and compound ion, can be considered as an example under this category. Sodium chloride, potassium nitrate, zinc sulfide, cesium chloride, calcium carbonate. All these made up of positive and negative ion is coming under ionic solids.
Ma'am?
Yeah.
Ma'am, but what about static electricity?
Static electricity is when you have to rub two surfaces, right? That is entirely different, and that is not because of positive and negative. Static electricity is because of the transfer of electron. That is in terms of electron, not in terms of ions.
Due to the friction?
No, static electricity is like when the electrons are transferred from one surface to the other when you're rubbing, right? When you're charging them by just rubbing. And the friction is one of the factor. But static electricity is in terms of electron transfer, not in terms of charge, positive and negative. So here the electricity can be because of two reasons, either because of movement of electron or movement of charge. So in ionic compound, there is no electrons which is moving. What is moving is the positive and negative ions, right? And that movement is possible only when you break the lattice by heating it, or you're melting it, or you dissolve it in water or any other solvent to make it as a solution. Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the second category of the solid, that is ionic solid. Third one is metallic solid. Here also there is not much explanation required because all metals are coming under this category. And you know about the electron C model of metals, right? Electron C model. I think we discussed it in grade 11 itself. What is electron C model? Yes, Abel, what is electron C model? Abel, are you there?
Ma'am, I don't know.
You're not studied about it, electron C model? Actually, we see that metals are arranged in the lattice. As example, if I take Na, sodium. Okay.
Is it the thing where cations are fixed?
No, here it's like sodium. We know that there is one electron in the outermost shell, right? Sodium is group 1, so it has got 1 electron, right? So that 1 electron, when you arrange an atom tightly, because of this tight arrangement, the electrons in the outermost shell comes out. Because when you have two atoms coming together, this is also electron, another atom has also got electron in the outermost shell. So that inter-electronic repulsion will be more. Just to avoid that, electrons will come out of the atom. So what happened? The atom will become now positive charge because electron has come out, right? So these electrons will be free to move throughout that metal surface. This model is known as electron sea model because they are positive ions in a sea of electron. That is, electrons are moving. They are not staying in one place. That is why this model is called electron sea model. That means the force of attraction between them is like the one between the metal ion and the mobile electron. The electron which is moving is attracting the positive. Usually two positive cannot be attracted. So that means the electron which is there in between is attracting these positive ions together. So that is the reason, or that is kind of bonding is called metallic bonding. Metallic bonding means the bonding which is operating between metal ions with the mobile electron. I think we have discussed it in grade 11. I remember, I don't know about you all. Anyway, that's not much important. You can see this is the metallic bonding where electrons are coming out of an atom and stays in the interstitial space or free space in the solid, and they are able to move. That is the reason why metals are conductors even in solid state, because there are free electrons. Ionic compounds, even though they have a charge, but in solid state they were not conducting because those charges were fixed. They are in the fixed position. But for metals, even though the ions are in the fixed position, electrons are coming out and they are moving around. And that is the reason why they are good conductor of heat and electricity even in solid state. Because there are free electrons are present in the metal, and this is explained by a model called electron sea model. All the examples of metal is coming under this category. You can take any example: aluminium, gold, silver, platinum. Yes?
Ma'am, mercury conducts heat, yes, but not electricity.
Yeah, because that is another case. Mercury is a special case in metal.
Okay.
Right.
Ma'am, can you tell again why they come out the electrons in that
See,
same model?
when atoms are arranged in a rigid, very strong arrangement, right? They are packed, and the electrons experiences repulsion, because when two atoms are coming, see, one atom, another atom, and each atom will have electrons revolving around the nucleus. We know that I cannot draw an atom as a circle, but just for understanding, right? Now we know this actual structures. They are in different subshells and all. So it won't be exactly a circle or a sphere, but somehow it will be moving around. So when you are arranging something like this, electron of one atom, electron of another atom, when they are moving, that movement in the outermost shell will be disturbed because of the repulsion experienced by the electron of the next atom, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So as a result, what happened? These electrons will come out to the free space. So what happened? The metal now has a positive charge, because if you take an example of sodium, there is one electron in the outermost shell. So sodium atom will get a positive charge because that one electron will come out of the atom. But if you take calcium ion, calcium is group 2. So there is 2 electrons in the outermost shell. So those 2 electrons will come out of the atom. So it will, metal has 2 plus charge, and the 2 electrons from each atom will be there in the space, free space.
All right.
Same applicable for aluminum and all. 3 atoms will come out. So that depends on the type of metal, which metal and how many electron in the valence shell and so many other stability factor. But whatever happen in all the metal, this is happening. One or more electrons are coming out of an atom. So that metal will convert as metal ions, and the electron which has moved out of the atom is free to move throughout the metal. And that is the reason for the conductor of electricity. So that is a third kind of solid, metallic solid. Last and the final one is covalent solids. Covalent solids mean, you know, that a solid where there is a covalent bonding. And you can see that is an example. The best example is for diamond and graphite. I'm aware that you learned all these things in grade 10, but still, just to recap what we discussed, diamond and graphite, you can see it's made up of carbon atom. Both of them are allotropes of carbon. They're pure carbon substances, but the type of bonding is different. Okay, the arrangement is different. It is making covalent bond between the carbon atom. Diamond has got more structured arrangement because of which it is more rigid. But for graphite, it has got a layered arrangement. Each layers are arranged. Both have got high melting and boiling point. Comparatively, diamond is more stronger, harder, and greater melting and melting point. Graphite is compared to diamond, it is less, but still it has got a high melting point because the covalent bonding is very strong. And due to the layered structure only, they are acting as a soft and also slippery. You know the pencil lead, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so which doesn't, if it is soft, doesn't mean that its melting point is very low. Okay, don't get misunderstood. Compared to diamond, graphite is less stronger, but compared to other substance, still graphite has got high melting point, and that high melting point is due to the strong covalent bonding. So each dot is carbon atom. And it is as it is in the layer form, each layers are connected with the weak winding force. That is the reason why the slippery nature, and graphite is used as lubricant. Anyway, that is just for the understanding. You already learned about it. So when we come back to our discussion, it is like mostly they form giant molecule. Their size will not be restricted to a small or some area or something. It's very large. It will be extended three-dimensionally to all the sides. Like atoms will be joined in all the three-dimensional, and you get a very big, huge structures. That is what they're known as covalent solids or network solid, because they just extend the network. So diamond, graphite, SiO2 is silica, that is quartz, silicon carbide. These are the examples coming under covalent solids. Am I clear?
Ma'am, can polymers also be here?
No,
Like,
polymers, it's different because it's not based on the type of bonding, and we know that plastic and all are amorphous, and this classification is only for crystalline. So that is not coming under this category.
okay, ma'am.
Because this classification is based on the nature of force, and it is for only for crystalline substances. So crystalline is considered as or divided as metallic, covalent, ionic, and molecular. Yeah. Again, a general understanding, this much is enough. No need of any extra details. So that is the end of first part of this chapter. That is the general introduction of solids. So yesterday and today we were just discussing about how the arrangement is different in solid. Based on the arrangement, we classify the solids as crystalline and amorphous. And today we discuss how can we classify the crystalline solids based on the type of force operating between them. So that is about the general thing, classification, their property, and how it differs from each other. That was the general understanding of the solid. Now we are going into the detail or the structure part of the solid and how it is different from each structures. So before we go to the analyzing the structures, there are certain terminologies which we should be very much familiar. So first we'll start with space lattice. The term space lattice. Space lattice is also known as crystal lattice. So this is the regular arrangement of a constituent particles in three-dimensional space is known as space lattice. Say example. This is the particles. Okay, so I'm arranging in one dimensionally like this. So if you have arrangement only in one dimensional, then you will get something in linear like a line because you're adding only in one dimensional, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And if you want to arrange particles in two-dimensional mean, you will get particles arranged in this way also, right? So this is a two-dimensional arrangement in a plane. You can arrange the particles two-dimensionally. So this is the first one dimension, second dimension, 2D. Third dimension mean if you keep one more layer over the other, like second layer coming over here on top of it, right? That is also possible. That is the third dimension, like layering one after another. So if you arrange a particles in a solid three-dimensionally, right, that regular arrangement of particle in a three-dimensional space is known as the space lattice. So this entire arrangement of a particle, say example, if you're talking about NaCl or if you're talking about aluminum metal, how these particles, atoms or ions or molecules are arranged three-dimensionally, then that space is called space lattice or crystal lattice. So the regular three-dimensional arrangement of particles in a solid is called space lattice. So that is the first term, space lattice.
Ma'am, can you show us an example of space lattice?
Okay, I'll show it in the next slide. See, this is just a space lattice because in wherever I show in a screen, it will be screen is a 2D plane. But just imagine a 3D thing like this is, you can imagine as a 3D, right?
Yes, ma'am.
The entire arrangement will be in a three-dimensional plane. See, if I'll start from here, okay, there is linear arrangement of particle, one-dimensional. This is the two-dimensional, like in this direction, in this direction, and also in this direction, particles are arranged. So the three-dimensional arrangement of a particle in a space is called space lattice. That is what the definition. The regular arrangement of constituent particles in three-dimensional space is known as space lattice. Say example, if you are showing Na plus and Cl minus only this way, it's not correct because it's just showing one direction. Only in one way I'm showing the growth of solid. It should be in all the direction, X, Y, and Z plane. Am I clear with this?
So this is only for crystalline solids.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we will specifically use space lattice is there for everything, but we specifically use crystal lattice for crystals.
Okay.
Okay. Next term is unit cell. Unit cell mean if you divide the entire space lattice, okay, this is just imagine this is a space lattice, And if you divide them, the smallest 3D portion, the smallest 3D space that is repeating to get the entire space lattice is called the unit cell. See, in this diagram, you can see the highlighted area. This one is highlighted. So this is the smallest 3D portion of the entire lattice. And as you can see over here, this portion is repeating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So 12 times that small unit is repeating to give you the entire space lattice, right? So the smallest 3D unit present in a space lattice is called unit cell. So it may repeat 10 times, it may repeat 100 times, it may repeat 1000 times, but whatever happen, the entire space lattice you will get when you repeat the unit cell several times. So the simplest unit, a 3D space in a space lattice is called the unit cell. That is why you can see the definition, the smallest 3-dimensional portion of a lattice which when repeated in different direction generates the complete space lattice is called unit cell. And it's better to understand by just looking into this diagram. Just imagine a wall made up of a brick. So brick is a 3D substance, right? Because it has got a length, breadth and height also. If you see a brick, okay, a piece of brick is actually, it has got a length, width and height also, right? And when you arrange this brick repeatedly in all the direction, you are getting a wall, right? So this simplest unit is called the unit cell, and the entire area you made using that simplest unit is called the crystal lattice or the space lattice. So you can look into the definition. Unit cell. Don't confuse it with particle. This is the particle is these dots. They are not called as unit cell. Unit cell is also a 3-dimensional portion, not a particle. That is different. Okay, so that is the main. Usually people will get confused whether it's a particle is unit cell or an area. It's not even area, a space. It's a 3-dimensional space. Am I clear? What is crystal lattice, space lattice and unit cell?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so only looking at the definition of these two things. If that is clear, then let's look into the next part, that is unit cell dimension. So if you have a unit cell, so you can see a cube is drawn over here. If you imagine that is the simplest 3D unit of a crystal, a cube. So when you look into different dimension, it has got different length. It may not be a cube. Just imagine this is the unit cell dimension. If you have, then it can have length. We used to have the word length, breadth, width and height, right? So instead of that, we just use the word A, B and C as its length, which is called edge length. Edge length of the unit cell is A, B and C. That means the length from this point. This is the length. So 3-dimensionally, 3 lengths will be there, right? Normally we use the word length, width and height. But here we are just notifying it with the small letters A, B and C, which mean the edge length. So this is one of the parameter for determining the shape and the size of the unit cell. The edge length. Second parameter is bond angle. Bond angle mean angle made between the axis. Different axis is there, X, Y and Z axis. So between X and Y, the angle made is alpha. Then you have beta and then you have gamma. So A, B, C are edge length, alpha, beta, gamma are the angles. So these are the different parameters deciding the shape and the size of the unit cell. Edge length and bond angle. I mean axial angle. Edge length and axial angle. These are the two parameters. Edge length can be of three way, like in the each direction X, Y, Z, A, B, and C. And angle also, three different angles are possible between X and Y, between Y and Z, between X and Z. So which is noted as alpha, beta, and gamma. So if we could draw this diagram, it will be more clear how we are using the symbols alpha, beta, gamma, A, B, and C. Let me ask a question. If A is equal to B is equal to C and alpha is equal to beta is equal to gamma is equal to 90, then what will be the shape of the unit cell?
Ma'am, cube.
Yeah, it will be a perfect cube because cube has got same length, edge length will be same, and each angle will be 90 perpendicular to each other, right? So like that, there are different possibilities are there based on the parameters A, B, C, alpha, beta, gamma. So first one is like if all of them are equal, edge length is equal and alpha, beta, gamma is equal to 90 degree, then the unit cell is a cube. It's cubic. So cubic unit cell is cube when edge length are identical and bond angles, axial bond angles are 90 degree. All of them are got same bond angle. Then you will get a perfect cube and that will be the unit cell. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So base C, the next, so this is the first possibility. When A equal to B equal to C, alpha, beta, gamma, everything is equal to 90. If A is equal to B, which is not equal to C, and alpha is equal to beta is equal to gamma is equal to 90. Just imagine a shape like that. Length and width is same, but height is not. Yeah.
Cuboid.
Yeah. So like that, there are different possibilities are there when you are measuring these parameters A, B, C, alpha, beta, gamma. So first one was cubic like that. Total 7 crystal system is available based on different possibilities of these value A, B, C, alpha, beta, gamma. That is what is shown in this diagram. A equal to B equal to C, alpha equal to beta is equal to gamma equal to 90. That is symbol cube that we already discussed. The second case was a tetragonal when A equal to B equal A is equal to B, which is not equal to C. And bond angles are all of them are 90. Then it will look like this, a tetragonal arrangement. Then you have orthorhombic, rhombohedral, monoclinic, triclinic, and hexagonal arrangement. So these are the 7 crystal system. So 7 crystal system means based on the bond parameters of unit cell, that is A, B, C, alpha, beta, gamma. There are different possibilities are there, and that possibilities are like 7 different possibilities. And the shape can be symbol cube, tetragonal, orthorhombic, hexagonal, triclinic, monoclinic, or rhombohedral. That means if you have a crystal which is coming, which unit cell is symbol cubic, mean this cube is repeating in all the 3 dimensional. So give you a something a space lattice. if you have a space lattice tetragonal mean, this tetragonal arrangement, this unit cell is repeating in all the 3 dimensionally to give you the space lattice. Orthorhombic the same way. If the unit cell is orthorhombic mean, this orthorhombic shape is repeating in all the 3 directionally to give you a space lattice. So based on the crystal shape, the unit cell is different, and that is based on parameters, that is the edge length and axial angle.
Ma'am, we should know the parameters for each shape.
Because in the reduced syllabus.
Ma'am, can you show us the previous slide, please? The diagram one.
This one?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this is the case, the simplest case of cube where all these edge length and bond angles, I mean the axial angles are same. That is a simple case of cube. But there are 6 more type of unit cell. So there are 7 unit cell system. If you're preparing for the entrance examination and all, the area they ask a lot of question, because you can get confused if you're not sure of these differences.
Ma'am, when the edge length came, ma'am, 2 minutes.
This one?
Ma'am, the last slide, please.
Not this one, right?
Ma'am, this one, ma'am, on it.
Okay. Yeah. Done?
Ma'am, could you show the slide after this for a minute, please?
This one diagram?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Actually, you have to imagine these kind of structures 3-dimensionally. Think about arrangement where each length, breadth and height is different, not same, but all of them up axial angles are 90 degree. So it's like orthorhombic arrangement. Like you might have seen the boxes of this kind. Length will be different, breadth will be different, and height is different, but they are in 90 angle. Axial angle is 90.
That's it for today?
Yes. You want more?
Ma'am, no. Definitely
Yeah?
no.
Yep. Memorize that and everything, yeah, right?
Okay, so I'll wind up over here. We shall continue tomorrow.